Hello and welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling with myself, Andrew Pollard. I hope you're well, I hope you're good, and I hope you are ready to discuss all things WWE 2K25, because this, yes, consider this our official review of the latest WWE video game. Now, given how well received WWE 2K24 was, Visual Concepts and 2K, they had quite the tough task on their hands to try and match last year's release. Did they manage to pull it off, or is 2K25 a step back for the series? Let's have a look. Right, as has become commonplace in these games, there's the simple pick up and play option, there's universe mode, there's the annual showcase mode, there's MyGM, there's MyFaction, there's MyRise, and also the much hyped new island mode, where players, you get to compete to impress a certain Roman Reigns. Acknowledge him. Firstly, I reckon, yeah, let's start things off with the for me, one of the standouts of 2K25, if not the standout of 2K25, that would be the showcase. Now, wow, last year's showcase was essentially a greatest hits of WrestleMania matches, and other recent showcases have seen you play through the careers of legends like John Cena, Rey Mysterio. This time out, it is all about the bloodline, the Samoan dynasty, and the various offshoots of the family. Not just do you get to play through a selection of matches featuring various members of the dynasty, but even better is the fact that each match, yes, it has an introduction from the wise man himself, Paul Heyman. And Heyman basically gives you a history lesson about the talents in question and adds some context to the match, I guess you could call it. For example, Paul Lee delves into his own past with the Samoan SWAT team back in WCW when discussing the Head Shrinkers. Ahead of then, you replay Fatu and Samu's WrestleMania 9 match against the Steiners. And while some of these matches in real life ended in defeat for the Bloodline names, Heyman then tasks you with righting these wrongs. So, while the Head Shrinkers lost to the Steiners at WrestleMania 9, your job is to fix that and get one over on Rick and Scott. This also gives WWE 2K25 the chance to bring in characters who've either never been in a WWE video game or haven't been in one for years. I mean, case in point, the Head Shrinkers. Their last appearance, I believe, was WWF Rage in the Cage back in 1993 on the Sega CD. There's the Wild Samoans here too, High Chief Peter Maivia, Rocky Maivia, the Islanders, Umaga, 3-minute warning, and some other fun surprises. Plus, there's a handful of what-if dream matches, such as there's the Wild Samoans go up against the Dudley Boys. And there's also a truly painful Money in the Bank ladder match that took me an age to finally win with Tamina. Man, that was rough. But maybe that's a me problem and not a 2K25 problem. I'm sure you will have a lot more ease to get through that match than I did. Now, as with previous showcase modes, each match has certain objectives that you need to hit in order to unlock certain characters, arenas, title belts, etc. There's also the addition of one timed objective in each match too, which can be a little bit tricky, a little bit annoying, dare I say, but I guess it makes things not too easy for you. And if that timer runs out, you can still finish the match and claim some unlockables, but you won't unlock all the unlockables unless you do indeed get the timed objective as well. One other change this time out is that we no longer have the cut between in-game action and real-life footage in showcase matches, which actually makes for a smoother, easy for me to say, a smoother experience. And while it was nice to see the old footage in the other showcase modes, it was sometimes a little bit jarring when you transition between the real footage and then to the actual in-game stuff. Another nice touch is that showcase opens at WrestleMania 40 as Cody Rhodes battles Roman Reigns. So you get to play through the end of that match. Basically, you get appearances from Solo, from John Cena, from The Rock, from The Undertaker. Now, all in all, the Bloodline showcase is fantastic. For an old man like me, it was great to revisit some fun memories from back in the day. And hey, I'm always here for WrestleMania 9's Senior Caesar Palace setup, which I should add is an unlockable arena, so props for that. But also for younger fans or for more casual wrestling fans, Showcase serves as a nice history lesson. Heyman making every video feel must-see as he hypes the upcoming match and the people involved in it. And while Showcase is a belter, so too is MyRise this time out, where that's where you create your own character or use an existing creation and play through a story mode that has various different paths you can take depending on the decisions that you make. As for the story, I won't go into too much detail, but it starts with Triple H and a draft, with Triple H looking for someone to lead the next new era, and that's where you come in, choosing your background, as in you can be an indie darling, you could be in a rival promotion, you could be someone with an M&A background who's just deciding that, yeah, I'm going to give that pro wrestling stuff a go. Again, I won't go into too much of the story just because spoilers are not cool. But yeah, you end up involved in something called Mutiny. What is Mutiny? Why, it is a mysterious faction that's got WWE in its crosshairs, taking over Raw and SmackDown, some NXT action, attacking various talents, and constantly expanding its number. Who is behind Mutiny? Who will be next to join the group? And what friends have you got to help you fend off this new threat? All I'll say is I've been having a blast with MyRise. You get to compete across the world, stop off at other promotions such as TBD or Pro Wrestling Japan, and you've got certain familiar faces popping up as well. Hey, Psycho Sally. Whereas previous MyRises give you the option from the start as to whether you want to play as a male or female, here you get to do both, being able to switch between your male wrestler and your female wrestler as the story develops. So one of those is on Raw, the other one is on SmackDown, and so you can switch between brands as both of those characters are part of the whole wider Mutiny story. Again, I will say no more about that story for fear of giving any spoilers away, but if you've historically enjoyed MyRise, then you will definitely get a kick out of this year's version. Plus, the emphasis on the decisions that you make, that kind of means there is some solid replayability there where you can go back and take certain different paths. I should probably mention as well that Universe Mode is back again, and it's largely the same as it usually is. I mean, you take charge of either a solo wrestler and play through various storylines, or you can take the wider sandbox approach and then just kind of shape the wider wrestling world. And yes, once again, for me, that meant bringing back WCW and assembling a roster of 80s and 90s favorites. What can I say? I am a sucker for all of that stuff. But yeah, Universe Mode is, it's Universe Mode. I always enjoy it myself, but there's nothing really massively different about Universe than in previous years. Although you can set up 2-day PLEs now, and there's also the ability to assign certain members of factions to certain types of matches, if that makes sense. For example, if you have, say, the Bloodline, you can mark Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa down for tag matches, meaning, Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa, you can keep them more in singles action. So, Showcase Mode, MyRise, very, very good. Universe Mode, as solid as ever, should that stuff tickle your pickle. But you know what? For the first time in one of these games, I've actually also really enjoyed MyGM so far. Now, this is a game mode I've usually tended to find a bit meh, but this time out, I don't know, it's really clicked with me. Here you go into, of course, brand warfare, taking charge of a brand of your choice, choosing your general manager, and then playing against either the computer, some friends in your house, or this time, you can also take MyGM online. Of course, being a nerd that I am again, I obviously brought back WCW, and not just that, but I made sensational Sherry MyGM. Yes, I believe Sherry's a new GM on this, as is Miss Elizabeth. And then went up against Mick Foley and his ECW brand. Now, granted, Mick Foley absolutely kicked my ass, but it was still a whole lot of fun as you assemble your roster, you set up rivalries, you book matches, you set up events and arenas, all while working under a budget. Then there are various power cards on the table where you can use them to boost your own wrestlers and shows, or sabotage a rival brand's wrestlers and events, which is something Mick Foley did to me way too many times. Seriously, Mick, I thought we were pals. So yeah, I fully went into MyGM thinking it'd all be a bit, nothing, as has often been the case for me, and that's just a personal preference really, rather than anything really, being bad about the previous versions. But now, I find myself enjoying MyGM way more than I was expecting. Another game mode that tends to never really click for me in previous releases is MyFaction, but that, unlike MyGM, that's kind of finally, the penny has dropped me, MyFaction, I'm still just, it's, I don't know, granted, I am not the target audience for this game mode, but MyFaction is essentially the series, its take on Ultimate Team. You put in together your squad of wrestlers and attempting to unlock certain goodies either by grinding, seriously grinding, or buying in-game currency with your very real money. Would I want a 2010 version of CM Punk? Absolutely, but do I fancy putting in all those hours or splashing my own cash to do so? Yeah, not really. Again, some people might enjoy MyFaction, but the mode as a whole just doesn't do much for me. Feeling like somewhat of a money-hungry cash grab, which of course is nothing unique to WWE 2K25, or that is the landscape of modern video games. And now we get to the extremely hyped new mode, The Island. This is an open world area where you try to impress Roman Reigns and earn yourself a WWE contract, wrestling matches as Roman tells you, or just roaming the island to meet other online players and go up against them. And it's all a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. The island has a few nice touches in terms of the places you can visit. Obviously, a lot of time has gone into creating the island. I mean, you've got Rey Mysterio's mask shop, which is a nice touch, Hurricane outfitters. But again, this is another mode that feels like it exists solely to get you to stump up virtual currency to unlock new things for your character. And what does virtual currency often result in? Yeah, that normally results in paying out of your own pocket unless you want to endlessly grind. But again, this sort of stuff, it isn't particularly aimed at me, and some might some might desperately want to unlock some shiny new sneakers or a fancy new jacket for your character, but this all just fell a little flat for me, especially with so much being made about the island before the game's release. As a concept, it is fun to walk around and interact with other players, but things, they wear extremely thin extremely quickly, at least for me anyway. How about general everyday gameplay? Well, the good news is that WWE 2K25 plays extremely well when you finally get between the ropes. It's fluid, it's weighty, in the sense that, yes, some of the bigger guys and girls have that meatiness to them, both in terms of when they dish out moves or in when you're trying to pick them up or do something to them. And 2K25 is a sort of game that anyone realistically can just pick up and play, but it will take a little bit of work to fully hone your skills, which is always appreciated by me. Intergender matches, they are a thing this time out as well. You're able to put the men against the women, just literally clicking of a button. It takes you can just do that in the main menu screen, the main play screen. It's just there. Select Rhea Ripley, select CM Punk, have a cracking old time. Chain wrestling has made its return. That is me, something personally I prefer to turn off, though I know a lot of people have missed the chain wrestling over the years, so that is back. Also nice is the added details to blood, sweat, and just general body damage. If you've been taking a beating with a steel chair or you've been ragdolled around with a bunch of suplexes, you'll notice the wear and tear on your body. It'll mark up. A very nice touch. And I can't not talk about one ridiculously simple new match feature, which is the ability to mess around with the camera and perspective during an entrance. More so, you can grab a third-person perspective from behind the wrestler, then zoom in, zoom out, rotate the camera as you so please, or switch to one of the various arena cameras, or switch back to the more standard animation that we're used to. It is such a simple feature, one that you could probably say is a little bit needless, but it will absolutely have you tinkering with a bunch of entrances when you get going with that. I had a lot of fun with that. So daft, so simple. Now, in terms of holding your skills, there's a whole variety of matches to do that in. Yes, you've got all the old favorites here, your Hell in a Cell, your TLC, your Elimination Chamber, the usual weapons, falls count anywhere, all that stuff, and the really fun ambulance matches back from 2K24. But there are a couple of really great new additions, one of which is the Underground match, where you have to win by knockout or submission. It's dark, dank, no ropes, and there's a watching crowd pounding on the mat. And it's actually a lot of fun. Simple, again, but very fun. Complete with a nice pre-match intro sequence that mirrors those underground fights we see pop up in NXT now and again. Also, the backstage brawl has been fleshed out a little bit more this time around, with the WWE archives here being a great place to crack some skulls, mainly because there are a whole bunch of Easter eggs lying around in the background. You'll be fighting and it's like, oh, there's that from there, or that sign from that, or oh, there's Triple H's throne, oh, there's the giant SmackDown fist from back in the day. But best of all for me in terms of the new match types is the Bloodline Rules match. Yes, that has been brought into the fold after WrestleMania 40, of course, and it is absolute carnage in the best possible way. Here, each person, they have 3 run-ins they can call in when things really get going in the match, meaning you can have up to an additional 6 computer-controlled wrestlers interfering and causing just, chaos, absolute chaos, glorious chaos. As for the run-ins, they can be stablemates, they can be rivals of your opponent, or by the looks of it, they can be a little bit random as well. I mean, for example, I did a match of Jey Uso going up against Gunther. There was run-ins from Sami Zayn, Jimmy Uso, finally Roman Reigns, and then on Gunther's side, you had Ludwig Kaiser, and then you had the Tongans, because of course, bloodline beef. Another match had Eddie Guerrero and CM Punk, and that had CM Punk helped out by Kurt Angle, and also Uncle Howdy, which, that one was a little bit more random, the Uncle Howdy one of like, okay, that's quite the run out. But yes, Bloodline Rules is nothing if not brilliant, brutal chaos, and I am absolutely here for all of it. Finally, the things so many gamers are always hugely involved in, the creations. Yes, the creation suite. This is frankly there's a ridiculous amount of stuff at your fingertips in the creation suite this time out, as there always is. Now, I am one of those who goes searching on the community creations and ends up with an excellent creation just by clicking a button. But for those of you out there doing the Lord's work and putting in the hours to perfect those creations, you will have plenty to sink your teeth into with WWE 2K25. Seriously, before the game is even officially on general release, there are already some just stunning creative wrestlers and arenas out there, with a Ricky Saints being one particularly fantastic piece of work from the ever great veteran Bangraman. Before I wrap things up though, I should add that some people did have some early issues where the game would crash if you selected certain game modes. I have had none of that, so there's been nothing here. I know there was a patch released over the weekend, it was put out pretty quickly, which seems to have hopefully put any stopped any of those quirky gremlins in the machine from doing too many bad things. So WWE 2K25 then. If you're after a standard rating, for me, it's an 8 out of 10. It's a 4 out of 5, whatever way you base it around. Particular highlights are the phenomenal showcase mode, the great story at the core of MyRise. The general gameplay is just breezy, fluid, heavy hitting, and impactful. And hey, the Bloodline rules, it's a fantastic fun addition. Not to mention I had way more fun with MyGM than in previous years. So yeah, it's a solid 2 thumbs up from this guy. The only real downside being the disappointment of the island, feeling like, as I mentioned, just like a cash grabbing exercise, much like MyFaction. But then again, MyFaction is a fairly popular game mode, so I'm sure those same people, they might get more of a kick out of the island than I did. Either way, there is so much here just to get into. It's a properly stat release. There's so much to crack on with. So yes, it's all good from me. It's an 8 out of 10. It's a 4 out of 5. It's 2 thumbs up. And with that, this has been WhatCulture Wrestling. I've been Andrew Pollard. Be well, be safe, and I will catch you down the road.